I'm so glad you're here today. Welcome back. This week we're going to talk about how after Israel was rescued from slavery in Egypt, they made a covenant with God at Mount Sinai. Then they came to the Promised Land. So now the Israelites are supposed to be living in a covenant relationship with God, obeying His 10 Commandments, but they're failing at that dramatically. And we're going to talk about the book of Samuel today, but before we get to the book of Samuel, there was a book called Judges. And that tells us a lot about how the Israelites really didn't know how to obey God, and they failed big time at that task. Israel's failure to do a good job at being in a covenant relationship with God and obeying His 10 Commandments shows their need for wise and faithful leaders. And the book of Samuel provides the answer to that need for a wise and faithful leader. So the Israelites go to Samuel and they say, "Samuel, we want a king just like every other nation has." But this makes Samuel really upset. So he goes to God and he tells God what the people are saying, and he asks God to kind of give him some advice and some guidance on what to do next. And God says, "Samuel, even though these people, the Israelites, are morally corrupt and they're not making good choices, give them what they ask for. Give them a king." And Samuel says to God, "Why would we give these people who don't love you and obey you what they want?" Do you think that the Israelites should get what they want even though their morals aren't right? Yeah, me either. God wants to give the Israelites a king because He wants to teach them a lesson. God wants to teach the Israelites that He rewards the humble but punishes the proud. And this is when we need Saul. Today we're going to be reading in 1 Samuel 8, verses 4 through 9. Then all the elders of Israel gathered together and came to Samuel at Ramah and said to him, "Behold, you are old and your sons do not walk in your ways. Now appoint for us a king to judge us like all the nations." But the thing displeased Samuel when they said, "Give us a king to judge us." And Samuel prayed to the Lord. And the Lord said to Samuel, "Obey the voice of the people in all that they say to you, for they have not rejected you, but they have rejected me from being king over them. According to all the deeds that they have done from the day I brought them out of Egypt, even to this day, forsaking me and serving other gods, so they are also doing to you. Now then, obey their voice. Only you shall solemnly warn them and show them the ways of the king who shall reign over them." So God appoints Saul as king of Israel. But Samuel goes to the people and warns them like God told him to do. He tells them, "Saul's not a great guy. He has a lot of heart problems, so he might not be the most kind leader." Then Samuel tells them, actually, he's going to make you and your children slaves of his land. You're going to have to farm and work really hard to give him all these crops and feed his animals, and he's going to really make you sad and hurt your family. But the people of Israel still want Saul as king. So Samuel says, okay. And Saul's this strong guy. He looks really good. He's really tall and handsome, and he has all these muscles. So the people of Israel feel pretty good with their decision when Saul first comes onto the scene. But then they see what happens, and Saul's heart problems start to come out. After Saul shows the people that he's really not fit to be their king, God calls Samuel and tells him, hey, it's time for Saul to not be Israel's king anymore. So Samuel goes to Saul and tells him, "You've been disobeying God, you're not fulfilling His commandments, and you're not a good leader for the Israelites. So we're going to have to replace you with a new king." And this is when Saul's downfall really starts. Saul was really dishonest, and he wasn't good at saying sorry whenever he made a mistake, and he made a lot of mistakes. So when God goes to Samuel, He tells him these things about Saul. So Samuel has eyes into Saul's heart because God led him. Because God looks at the inward parts of us and not the outside. Remember earlier we mentioned that Saul was this tall, handsome, strong man. So the Israelites saw that and figured that he would be a good enough fit to be their wise and faithful leader. But they didn't see Saul's heart. So Samuel now has eyes into Saul's heart because God let him see. And so Samuel is angry knowing these things about Saul, and he wants to honor and love God. And this is why Samuel goes to Saul and tells him, hey, you're not right for this this nation. We have to figure out somebody new to be our leader. So because Saul's not a nice, kind, faithful, God-loving man, he does not handle this well. And next week, we're going to see more about how Saul really starts to tumble down and make some really bad decisions, even as he finishes being king of Israel. Here are some things you can think about as you go throughout your week. God opposes the proud and exalts the humble. Think about some ways that you can be humble this week. Maybe ask your parents what the word humble means, and they can help you come up with some ideas. Also remember that despite human evil, God is always at work and God always has a plan. That's a really comforting thing to think about, that even whenever we make mistakes or our hearts have sin in them, God always has a plan for us to prosper and prevail. And then the last thing to remember is that all these stories are pointing to a greater faithful leader named Jesus, and we'll learn about him in the weeks to come.